All right, guys, we're back here again today with myself and Sunny and BJ Fanatics. So before I go into this, I want you guys to know that this has been by far the most difficult instructional that we've had to film. So what I originally planned to do was to do a full open guard series from start to finish and include both supine and seated guard. What I realized was we weren't even close to being finished with a seated versus standing interface, and we already had about 7 hours worth of tape. So I quickly realized that this was going to be a 15 to 20 hour video if I was going to finish the entire thing. We still had to do a full supine guard and to opponent with 2 knees downs, all kinds of different sumigeshis, as well as an opponent with 1 knee up. So we weren't even close to being halfway done yet, and we already had like over 7 hours of footage. And it's my belief that anything over 10 hours, once you start getting up 12, 15, 20 hours, it kind of gets too messy, and it's hard for people to start putting things together. People start skipping chapters where they go from they go all the way right to butterfly guard, and then things don't make sense because I already went over stuff in the beginning that you didn't see. So what I decided to do is to split it into 2 different portions where we have 1 supine instructional and 1 seated guard instructional. So this will end up being 2 different instructionals, 1 seated and one supine. So we'll do supine first, which will entail me being on my back with Ashigarami and X guard variations, as well as De La Riva and reverse De La Riva variations. All right. So we're going to be looking at the interface between legs inside, where I have 2 knees inside of my partner's legs, where we play Ashigarami variations, Ashi X variations, full X guard variations, and Oshiro X variations, as well as legs outside, where we have outside De La Riva and reverse De La Riva from here. All right. So we're going to be splitting this into 2 different portions, and today we'll be going over the supine version of open guard. All right. So while it's going to be broken into 2 different instructionals, 1 supine and 1 seated, we're going to look at the 4 scenarios that we're going to be going over from open guard as a whole. All right, so we're going to have a standing opponent in front of us. You have to understand that there are 4 different scenarios my partner can play with. 1 is standing square stance, and this is going to make a difference when we're playing a seated versus standing guard. But just so you understand the concept of playing an open guard, we're looking at 4 different scenarios. So my partner has a square stance, she's standing in front of me. My partner can have a staggered stance, standing in front of me. My partner can be on 2 knees, kneeling in front of me. And my partner can be with 1 knee up, kneeling in front of me. Okay? So these are 4 different scenarios we can find ourselves in open guard. Now, most of what we're going to be doing today, stand up, is going to be my partner standing in front of me, either with a square stance, with hands on my ankles, where now as she goes to lean into me, I can start to bring her into positions where we can enter into an Ashigarami and go into attacks. Or a partner standing with a staggered stance in front of me, where now we either choose to go outside De La Riva or reverse De La Riva, depending on where she steps into. All right, we're going to go into attacks from there. Just understand that when your partner stands in front of you, you're going to have to, especially when you're seated, you're going to have to start to do different things from here. Okay, when we'll go obviously more to this into the seated portion, but when she stands square, I have to be able to understand where she's trying to go. She has to at least split her legs to some degree so to pass. Where if she's square, I can go in and start immediately attacking my partner's legs. If she's staggered, now I have to start staggering my stance and adjusting accordingly. Okay, and I've talked about this a little bit in the past, and I'll talk about it a lot more in the future as we start to go into seated versus standing. But understand there's 4 scenarios that my partner can be in: staggered, square, standing, 2 knees down, and 1 leg up. We're going to break this into both supine and seated variations. All right, so now let's talk about the combination of playing legs inside and legs outside. All right, when I show this, we're going to be showing obviously just single moves at a time. But you have to understand the interface between going from inside to outside position and vice versa. Okay, so if we're in a supine position and my partner has one leg forward, for example, we can start with an outside De La Riva, like so, and we can start using this to start getting my legs back to the inside. Right now we both have one leg to the inside, obviously. If I want to enter into my partner's legs and go into some kind of Ashigarami X-guard variation, obviously I have to get both of my feet to the inside. Now, if my partner's just posting on my legs and making it difficult for me, I can always start to off-balance my partner. I can go from outside position, and as she goes to recover, for example, I can go back to inside position and start to go into attacks on my partner. Okay, so we can always go from both outside to inside and inside to outside. All right? So let's say my partner, for example, I have an Ashigarami, and my partner manages to backstep. I can always take my leg back around and recover and go back to an outside De La Riva, for example. Okay, so you have to be able to play both inside position and outside position. And this goes for my partner too. My partner has a choice to step a leg to the inside and start to pass, either with a straight hamstring or a cross hamstring, and start to pass like so. She also has a choice where she can take my legs by the ankles, throw my legs by, and play outside passing, right? And go in and try to pass my guard in this way. So both as a passer and as a guard player, you have to understand the combination of playing both legs outside and legs inside. She can step in, for example, 1 second, and then quickly she shoots out and throws the legs by, and now she starts passing, all right? So as we're going through this series, you have to understand that at any given moment, if you feel like the time is right, you can always transfer from outside to inside or from inside to outside position, both as the guard passer and as the guard player. All right, let's talk about initially, how can we stop an opponent when we're on our back, just quickly shooting past their legs and passing a guard, right? There's nothing worse than that. There's nothing more frustrating than someone lifting your ankles, putting you down on your back, and then just shooting past your legs, and next thing you know, you're getting your guard passed, right? So the first thing we want is always to negate movement in some way. What's never really acceptable is for my opponent to put two hands on my shins for any prolonged amount of time, okay? If I can't extend my legs back and away, because now my knees come away from my chest, she throws by, and I start to get my guard passed. All right, so we can never accept prolonged grips on either one of our ankles, all right? So as she goes to push and lean onto me, like so, you always have to strip grips off my ankles to be able to start getting my partner coming forward and entering into my partner's legs. If my partner, for example, grabs 1 foot with a 2-on-1, she tries to walk and throw the leg by and pass my guard, you always have to do things where you use your second foot as a hand to try to peel your partner's grips off. So as she goes to take a strong grip, I can always strip one grip at a time off, and now I can always pummel that leg out. All right, so we can never accept grips or situations where my partner has grips for long amounts of time on my leg, especially without the gi. All right, with the gi, it's obviously harder because they have fabric to grab onto, but without the gi, she doesn't really have any stable grips from here. So I can always either pummel my legs in, or if she's leaning into me, I can strip grips with my hands. She grabs a 2-on-1, and I always use my second foot to go in and strip and pummel my legs out. All right, so that's the first thing. Now, if she steps into me, like so, now the fear is her moving back and away and then just shooting out to the side, and next thing you know, she's passing my guard. So I always want to find ways to control my partner's ankles the best that I can, all right? I have to negate my partner's movement where she can't just start throwing side to side to side to side and keep her offensive cycle going, all right? As we talked about in the past, think about jiu-jitsu in terms of offensive and defensive cycles. If I'm constantly in a defensive cycle and she's constantly in an offensive cycle, that's no good for me. She's basically just attacking, and then next thing you know, I'm either getting like passed or getting submitted, whatever the case is, okay? So I want to find ways to stop her defensive cycle and go right into my offensive cycle. Stop her offensive cycle and go right into my own offensive cycle, okay? So I want to initially create grips to my partner at the ankles, right? Either the ankles or at the wrists. So now when she goes to move and tore on to the side, her ankles are stuck. When she goes to back out and away from me and throw the ankles to the side, her ankles are stuck. So I create this initial stickiness with my grips where it's hard now for my partner to go through and immediately throw my legs to the side. So you can use a combination of ankle and wrist grips from various positions, be able to control your partner's movement and not allow her to start going either right to the middle or out to the side. Another big thing we're going to be talking about, not so much today, but in the future with guard retention, is never letting your partner get past your hip line or up past your shoulder line. If these two things happen, you're not really playing open guard anymore. You're kind of just defending having your guard being passed. All right. So this is more of a guard retention instructional. But we're going to talk about it a little bit today. But most of what we do is going to be with the premise that our feet and knees are pointing towards our partner and she's in front of us. All right. So it can be mostly offensive attacks from us. Now my partner hitting a first offensive move, and then we going into attacks from here. That's more along the lines of a guard retention instructional. All right. So everything that we're going to be doing from here is I'm going to have hands and feet on her. She's going to be standing relatively in front of me. And then from here, we can start to go into various attacks with feet inside and outside. All right. So as far as goals going, we never want my partner to have prolonged grips on our ankles. We never want our partner to be so mobile where she can just shoot side to side without any resistance. And we never want our partner to be able to shoot to a position where she gets past our hip line or up to our shoulder line. Right? And past her hip line doesn't just mean throwing the legs to the outside and going to a Toreando. We don't want my partner to hit a knee slice, for example, a quick knee slice where now she's past my hip line and this is no good from here. All right? So we have to find ways to keep my partner in front of us with as much contact as possible to my partner. All right? The more contact my body has with hers, the slower she's going to be. So the hand slows her down, the foot slows her down, the second leg slows her down. Now if I take a grip on her wrist, now when she goes to move, it's not an easy thing. I can always off balance and start to go into all of my attacks from there. Okay, so we need to create a connection to our opponent to be able to slow them down initially to start to go into our attacks. All right, let's talk a little bit now about how important it is to have concave shoulders when we're playing bottom position. Not only when we're playing bottom position with guard play, but escaping pins as well. Whenever we're looking to go to some kind of offense, we're looking to play with concave shoulders. It's very important from bottom position. So if I have a partner on top of us, what I don't ever want, whether she's standing or seated, whether I'm supine or seated, is to have my two shoulders square with one another. I always want to create this banana shape with my spine by rolling my two shoulders forward into a concave position. Okay? This makes everything much easier, and it makes it much easier for you to move along the mat side to side and into inversions if you need to. All right? When I play from this position, if my back is flat on the floor, it's very hard for me to follow my opponent from here. Okay? For example, if she goes to move out to the side, I have no ability to swivel my body because all of my back is connected to the floor. Whereas if I come concave and my lower back comes slightly off the floor, my shoulders come off the ground, now as she goes to move out and away from me, just a simple post on her leg will allow me to follow her very easily. Whereas if my back is completely on the floor and she has to move out, now when I touch her leg, there's no way I can ever follow her. So it's very hard to follow a mobile opponent with two shoulders on the floor when you have square shoulders. Whereas the second I come concave, now if I want to follow her, all I have to do is give a little push, and I'm right in front of her. And now I'm ready to go. Okay? In addition, it's much harder to elevate your partner. Let's say I want to bump her forward. From here, if my head's on the floor, my back is flat on the mat, it's very hard for me to lift with my abdominal muscles. Okay, by just bumping her forward. But the second I come concave, I can just start pulling my knees into my chest, and everything becomes much easier. Okay? This becomes a big difference when you start playing things like X guard, where I enter into an X guard on my partner, and I want to start getting her off balanced and moving from one hip or from being square by two hips to one hip of the other to start off balancing her. If my back's in the floor and my head's in the mat, it's very hard for me to start getting her hands to the ground, to start moving out in this direction, to start heisting up. I can't really do anything from here. But the second I become concave, I can swivel easily from one hip to the other and start to really off balance my partner. Now if she goes to stand up, I can start sitting her down and moving to the other side. Right? With butterfly guard, obviously this isn't supine, so we're going to cover this in the seated portion, but just so you understand, with butterfly guard, If I go to elevate my partner from this position, it becomes very, very difficult if I fall and my back is flat on the floor. Now you'll never elevate anybody. But when you create this rocking chair effect, where you have concave shoulders, and you can rock back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, you can elevate people with almost no effort for hours and hours without any energy being used. You notice that as we go forwards and backwards, there's no strain in my voice, because all I'm doing is using the curvature of my body to get her elevated up on top of me. Whereas if I try to do it with square shoulders, now it's impossible almost to get my partner up on top of me. Okay? The idea of having concave shoulders when playing a bottom position, both in guards and in pin escapes, is very, very important for your success. Okay? So you have to be able to do, most sports, being athletic, is doing this, is arching backwards. In our sport, a big part of being athletic is having the ability to do this, to roll the shoulder forward and having bad posture, which is actually good posture for our sport. That's why we always sit like this and walk around like this. Because everything we do is concave shoulders, even from top position. When I play from here, I'm always playing with concave shoulders. I'm never exposing my midsection to attacks. Everything's close together. My elbows are close together. My shoulders are concave. So when I come in, I play from here. Everything's draped over and close together. All right. That's very important for many positions to have concave shoulders. Usually starting with some kind of bridge and then finishing with some kind of concave shoulders. Even with heel hook finishes, for example. I go in. I want my hands close to my chin. So as I go to finish, I can't have my shoulders square. I have to first become concave. And now, as I go to finish, I become concave first. And now I extend back and get to the finish. All right, so it's very important for many different positions to understand the importance of having rounded and concave shoulders. All right, so a big part of what we're going to be doing today is Ashigarami and X-guard. All right, and this is a big reason why I decided to actually split the instructional into two different parts, because the last thing I want is to be 18 hours into an instructional teaching butterfly guard, and when I elevate someone into Ashigarami, I just say, oh, do what we worked on in the past from here, and then someone doesn't want to watch the beginning of the video, they skip the butterfly guard, and then I enter into Ashigarami from butterfly guard or X guard from butterfly guard, and then I'm not explaining anything from there, and no one knows what the fuck is going on. All right, so this one's going to be primarily Ashigarami based, so that by the time you get to butterfly guard, which will be relatively early in the next instructional, you know what to do from Ashigarami. Whereas if you just skip to that portion in a 22-hour long video, you'd have no idea what was going on. All right, when we go in to enter into Ashigarami, there are some drills that we can be doing right from the beginning, which actually John used to have us do this like every single day, multiple times a day, like when I was a purple and brown belt starting to come up, just to get used to firing your hips up, having those concave shoulders. All right, there's two basic Ashigarami drills. One is a straight Ashi entrance, where we can fire our legs up into an Ashigarami and we catch. Now we come out, we switch knees, and we catch. I want to make sure that when I enter into an Ashigarami, I mold the curvature of my body into the curvature of my partner's body. When we lock up, it's crucial that I don't have any space between myself and her. My legs should be up as high as possible, my hips as close as possible to my partner's, and the least amount of disconnect possible. So that as I throw my Ashigarami into place, she gets immediately off balanced. That's what we should feel. Okay, we come up, we hit a tight catch, and we release. We come up, tight catch, and we release. The only way that you can do this for a minute at a time is by having concave shoulders to create that rocking effect with your body so you don't tire out your abs every time you go up. So I catch one, I come down, I catch. 2. Every time I go up, I want to connect my heel and my knee together. Like so. Notice I have concave shoulders the whole time. As my legs come up, I get a strong catch, a strong bite, so that when we fall, my hips are connected to her hips, and we're ready to immediately go into the break. It's unacceptable to have my hips below her knee, so we have a weak ashigarami. When we fall down, I go for a heel hook, and she's immediately gone. The second I come up, I want to make a strong catch, so that as soon as she falls, even when she goes to run completely away from me, as she falls, she can't go anywhere. When she goes to crush me, she can't go anywhere. And now we're ready to go in and start to attack our partner's legs. Okay, that's the first basic ashigarami drill. Now a more advanced drill that we can be looking at, which I'm going to give you guys a realistic combat situation in a second, is to do the inversion drill at the cross ashigarami, where we catch our partner's legs like so, and now we just throw our knees up. As our knees come up, we take one of our heels and we go cross hamstring, like so. Now from here, I pull myself up so that my heels come up as high as they can. I make a turn, and I catch. Now we take our shoelace to the front of our partner's thigh. We push ourselves back to center. We take our second leg up. Cross hamstring. We pull ourselves up. As our hips come up, we turn so that our thigh is a wedge behind our partner's hamstring. Like so. When I catch, I make sure that I don't figure four my legs. If you figure four your legs, you feel that you have the confidence of a stronger wedge around your partner's leg because you have figure four legs, but you don't. If I figure four my legs, it puts a limit on how tight the lock can be. Now when she pushes my knees down, even if I squeeze tight, the knees will always come out. So when I lock, I just scissor the legs while she's standing above me. When she's down on her butt, it changes things. Then you can figure four. But when she's standing above me, I just scissor the legs. So I come up, I go cross hamstring, I fire my hips up, I turn around the corner, I scissor the legs. Now, as she goes to push my knees down, it's impossible. Now we go shoelaces to the thigh, back to center, cross hamstring, catch. Shoelaces to thigh, back to center, cross hamstring, catch. Thigh, center, cross hamstring, catch. Cross hamstring. I pull myself up so my hips come to my partner. So I shoot my hips up and I back heel with this action leg here. The right leg in this case. I come up and now I just roll over my shoulder, not over your neck. I look towards my partner's feet and I catch. Come back to center. Left leg goes up, cross hamstring. I catch. As I come up, I look towards my partner's feet so I don't hurt my neck. I catch. And then you get comfortable. And then eventually you can sit your partner down to the floor and you're ready to go in and go for either your sweeps or your attacks. Okay? So just so you get used to playing open guard and entering into these positions, doing these drills every day until you're used to it is a very big help. All right, so like we talked about before, we're not really going to go into too much guard retention stuff where my partner does get past my hip line or does get up to my shoulder line. But I want to show you one thing, I want to show you how we enter into ashigarami when my partner hits a throw by using the same inversion that we just did. Okay, So she's going to be up, and she goes to hit a throw by. The second she goes to hit a throw by, we're going to take a grip like so, right down by our partner's ankle. Here. So now, as she goes to throw by, I use a combination of this grip and concave shoulders to get myself to a fully inverted position. Again, if my shoulders are flat on the floor, you'll never be able to move yourself. So I time her throw by. As she's in front of me, she goes to throw by. I immediately go right into an inversion, and I capture both my partner's legs. Now, she's square here, so I always enter into the leg closest to me. If she's staggered here, I always enter into the leg closest to me. If she was square, now I can go into either leg because it's a symmetrical position. But because she's staggered, now I just throw everything up. I catch, I come around the corner, and now we can sit our partner down, ready to cross Ashigarami. So just a combat realistic situation. When we're supine, she goes to immediately throw my legs by, and we immediately are ready to come up, fire our legs into place, and go into attacks on our partner's legs. Right, so just know that if your partner does just shoot your legs by really quickly, obviously we're playing with some guard retention stuff here. But if you want to just go into an attack right away, we have concave shoulders, we catch, we time her. So we wait for her to hit the throw by, and then immediately we're into position, ready to sit our partner down and get to attacks on our partner's legs or come up and pass wherever you want from there. All right, so just a combat realistic situation where our partner hits a throw by, and we use that same inversion to come up and enter into our partner's legs. I know it looks kind of fast-paced and athletic, but I'm not really asking you to do much. All you have to be able to do is this. I'm not asking you to put your feet or your knees on the floor. If you can just get your lower back off the floor that much, you can enter into your partner's legs. It's not really that difficult. Okay, so let's look at a basic Ashigarami entrance when our partner has two hands on our shins and is trying to throw us by. All right, one of the most common things you see against a supine player is people just come in, they immediately take grips on your shin muscles, and they either lean into you to try to get you tired out and then eventually do something, or they just come in quickly and throw the legs to the side. Okay? Whenever I see this from top position, coming in and my partner leaning on me, I never accept my partner just pushing in like so. A lot of people will just stay here for minutes at a time to just kind of monitor their partner and play from here, see what their partner's going to do, and a lot of people stall from here. We can never allow this. We always have to be disrupting our partner's hand placement from top and never allowing them to just come in and quickly hit the throw by and get past that hip line. Okay? So the second our partner comes out in front of us and has hands on my shins, immediately we're going to take our knees to our chest. Our partner's obviously pushing the knees in. We're going to take two V grips in front of our partner's wrists like so. And now we're going to push in the same direction my partner's fingers point, up towards my knees. What this will do is always pull her forwards into me like so. Now notice, usually what happens is your partner stance squares a little bit. Right now she's very staggered. As I go to push everything off, she takes a correction step with that left leg, and that brings that leg towards me. So now you have a choice. I generally recommend entering whichever leg is closest to you. So from here, we take our knee, we place it behind our partner's knee. As the knee comes behind our partner's knee, we just pull her forwards, and now we're ready to go in. Before my legs fire into place, there's always going to be, with a lot of people, that half a second where your partner tries to just explode out and away from you and rip the leg out. Okay? So the second we see this, we immediately take our tricep and cover our partner's shoelaces. So what we want is the back of our shoulder and our tricep over our partner's shoelaces. So now, even without leg positioning, when she goes to run away from me, it makes it incredibly difficult. And now from here, as my legs fire into position, I can switch to an Achilles lock. And now we're in position, ready to sit our partner down. Okay? So we have a partner in front of us. She's leaning into us like so. We can never accept this. We don't want us to get tired out. Our partner's leaning all the way on top of us. This is no good. Or just come in and quickly hit a throw by. And now I'm getting my guard pass. So the second you see grips on the ankles, we immediately come through. We get our partner walking forward. Now, I don't let go of my partner's wrist until I have a knee behind my partner's knee. So now, when she goes to run out and away from me, we catch. Let her run. Not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing from here. Now we fire our legs up, and as we fire our legs up, we switch to an Achilles grip. We catch, and we can sit our partner down to the floor. All right, so she has hands on. We come in. We catch. As she goes to run away, that's when our legs come into place, and now we can either reap across or sit our partner down for the win. All right, so it's always a very precise order of operations. We get our partner stepping forwards. As she steps forwards, we immediately put a knee behind. Now as she goes to run, we catch, and then the legs come up. Now we're ready to go in and start attacking either, obviously, heel hooks or coming up and getting sweeps to top position. Okay, so just a basic Ashigarami entrance, never allowing your partner to keep heavy hands on your shins from a supine position. All right, so now obviously, if you see my instructionals before, we start off pretty basic and then we start to get more advanced as we go on. Right, I want to cater to just basic students right now or just advanced students. I want to kind of have a mix of everything. And then eventually maybe we'll get more specific where I do just the fundamentals or just an advanced series. But for right now, we're going to start off pretty basic and then we're going to get more advanced as we go. Right? So we enter into an initial Ashigarami. Our partner has hands on. We bump our partner forward, and again, we can enter into either leg. All right, so we fire up and we're into a basic Ashigarami. Again, we have to make sure that the curvature of our body forms to the curvature of our partner's body. So we bring everything up, we clamp, and we get our knee connected to our own heel. So we want to monitor both of our partner's legs to some degree. A big mistake people make is they only control one of their partner's legs within Ashigarami, like so. And I have the foot on this knee or hamstring. So now when I set my partner down, first of all, it's hard to do that. When I sit my partner down, it makes it easy for my partner to come up and start to crush me. That's no good. So what I want is to have a strong connection of my heel to my knee and my shoelaces to my partner's far hamstring. Here. So now, from this position, we can easily start to bring our knees up, angle our knees out in this direction, and flare our shoelaces into our partner's far hamstring. So she can backstep 1, 2, 3 times, and then eventually she falls down. Now, because I'm controlling my partner's far hamstring, when she goes to come up and crush me, it's a very difficult task. And now we have the choice of either going for attacks on my partner's legs or simply heisting up and getting top position and going in for the win. All right, so just sitting our partner down, the very basic Ashigarami sweep. She comes in, we get our partner stepping forwards, and from here, we enter into an Ashigarami. Again, everything should be coming up. We should be getting our hips nice and high to mold to our partner's legs. So there's that immediate off-balancing effect. Now from here, I just take my knees up. I angle my knees out in this direction, in the direction I'm sweeping, and my right leg flares my shoelaces into my partner's far hamstring. So she goes to back step. She can go 1, 2, or 3 times. Try to stay up. She can go 1, 2, 3 times. And now she's down. And now we're ready to go in with attacks in the legs or up with sweeps, ready to start passing. We did the Ashigarami drills before where we went from leg to leg. Now let's look at this in a more realistic situation where my partner does a good job defending, or I feel like I have to switch legs for whatever reason. We're going to go from one leg to the other leg. All right? What this looks like is I enter into a basic Ashigarami. We get our partner stepping forwards. We enter into an Ashigarami like so. Now, from here, my partner's always going to look to start taking an inside grip of my foot and peeling this foot off like so, and starting to perform a back step where she can get 2 of her legs to one side of my body. Right? But with any Ashigarami specialist, if you can get 2 legs to one side of the body, you're in pretty good shape. All right? So I get my legs into place. And the second she goes to peel my foot off, we're just going to catch the second leg. She peels that foot, and we're just going to come immediately through and fire our legs up into the opposite side and sit our partner down with 2 legs controlled. All right? So she has a relatively athletic stance. She comes in, I get an ashigarami into place, and as I get an ashigarami, she backs this leg out and away from me. Now, as she goes, it's hard for me to reach this leg now. So maybe I gotta sit my partner down, and it's difficult to get my partner down initially. And before I can sit her down, she peels that foot off. When she peels that foot off, I immediately square myself. So I use that rocking motion to square myself. So now I'm on the center line, and now I have control of both my partner's legs. So when I throw my legs back up, we can have control of both of our partner's legs, and we can easily sit her down to the floor for the win. Okay? This is the most basic showing of this. Now let's say my partner, for example, pushes my knee down and goes to mount me. I have to be able to take knee to elbow on the opposite side, and now as she goes to drop into a mount, switch legs onto the opposite side. Okay? So you have to be able to switch from one side to the other. It's absolutely imperative. You can't just hammer away at one leg when your partner's giving you strong defensive reactions and expect to be able to be successful at a higher level. You have to be able to switch legs. All right? Very common reaction is for your partner, not a smart reaction, but a very common reaction is for your partner, again, to push his knee down and try to slip into mount. If you stay on the same leg, you're going to get mounted. So what you have to be able to do is to switch legs where she goes to push that knee down. I am able to switch legs to the opposite side and go right back into attacks. Okay? So you need to be able to switch from one leg to the other, whether it's X-guard, ashigarami, it doesn't make a difference. If you lose one leg or you feel like you're compromised, you have to be able to have the confidence to switch to the other leg. Okay? And while we're on the topic, when we play an ashigarami, a Rimi ashigarami type game, you have the choice of playing with an Achilles grip or just a wedge over the top of your partner's shoelaces. This hand, everyone asks, what does this hand do? This hand is always fishing for the far leg, but most importantly, it's monitoring this knee. Right? This hand has to monitor this knee so that your partner can't post on this knee. It's always acceptable for your partner to be able to peel this foot off the hip. There's so much distance that you can't really do anything to stop your partner from peeling that foot off the hip. Okay? We have an ashigarami. If she goes to peel that foot off, I can't really do anything about that. That's acceptable. What I can't have is my partner pushing my knee straight down, and threatening just dropping into mount. So whenever I see someone post on that knee, I immediately strip that grip off. Whether it's a push, whether it's a pull, whatever it is, we have to strip that grip off. So as she goes to push that knee down, I immediately strip that hand off. We can never accept even two hands. I can never accept hands being on my knee. And now the second I see her going back to the knee, I off balance her to get her hands out for base and to stop her posting on that knee by monitoring with my hand and by constantly off balancing her with my legs. All right, so let's take a look now at what my partner has to do without peeling any grips to defend a basic sit down. Okay, so if she's on top, or she's on bottom, and I'm on top, she lost an ashigarami. As she goes to off balance me, I start to get off balance in this direction. This means that if my knee bows out beyond my hip, I'm gonna fall down. Okay, if I can get my knee to move outside my hip, that's when I start getting severely off balance. Okay. So my natural reaction is as she goes to point my knee outwards, I point my knee inwards. So now when she goes to sweep me in this direction, it's hard. But now if she starts to go the opposite direction, now I start to find myself in trouble. So this is the dilemma we have to create. You have to create a situation where I get my partner pointing the knee in a certain given direction where I know where she's going to go. Okay? So I enter into an ashigarami. I know if I attempt to sweep her, she's going to start pointing the knee inwards. The second I feel this, I immediately cast my leg over hers, begin to turn her knee down to the floor, and get her heel exposed. So that now from here, we can start to immediately lock an outside heel hook. We can start to roll our partner through and start to finish either from a Rimi or from an outside ashigarami. Or obviously, you can just sit your partner down to the floor and then start heisting up to top position. Okay. Most of the time what will happen is your partner gives a turn harder in a given direction because of the threat of the heel hook. So your partner usually gives you some resistance by turning the knee in, and then when you start to go into a reap, your partner shoots the leg back, and that's when the sweep becomes easy. So usually what happens is I sweep one direction, she turns the knee in, I try to give a strong reap, and now she explodes back in the opposite direction, and that makes it easy for me to put her butt down to the ground. Okay. You saw this actually in the Tim Spriggs match. I ended up using it to get a sweep. I went to off balance in this direction. He turned. I exposed the heel. And now he actually took his knee free, went to go take my back, and I just followed him up and got the top position. So I use it for a sweep. But this is very common where we fire up into an Ashigarami. As we go to sit her down, she feels like she doesn't want to go down. So she turns the knee in. As she turns the knee in, she aids me in casting my leg across and getting a strong bite where now I'm going to have her knee going down towards the floor. Now from here, we catch an outside heel hook grip, and we can start putting her hands down to the ground. Now there's a variety of things that we can do from here. We can chase our partner's back, we can roll our partner through, we can go for sweeps. And the main thing is to break her down to her hands to start going into my attacks. Now, if we find ourselves in a position where she's back up, and she doesn't allow me to get to a heel hook grip, which is common, I start to go one way, she resists, I go the other way, and she explodes back in the opposite direction, and she turns the knee out so far, because she's afraid of getting the heel hook grip set in, that she immediately falls down to her butt, and now we're ready to come into a position where we can heist on top of our partner and start going into all kinds of different passing or leg attacks right from there. Okay? So we play dilemma of where our partner's knee is pointing. We start by bowing the knee out with the basic sweep. She turns it in, and then we go across the opposite direction. If she allows that, then we go for an outside heel hook. If she doesn't, then we sit her back down to the floor in the opposite direction when she explodes back against the secondary sweep. All right, so now let's look at making a switch from a Rimi Ashigarami to an outside Ashigarami. Now this kind of goes more along the lines of leg locking, but we're going to take a look at it anyways because you can sweep your partner with this. All right, so this time we enter into a basic Ashigarami. And again, there's going to be a lot more entrances from butterfly guard and from a seated position, but I just want to show you guys the mechanics of sweeping from Ashigarami and X guard so you guys have that down. All right, so we get into an Ashigarami entrance and we get everything set in place. Now, let's say we want to switch from an Arimi Ashigarami to an outside Ashigarami, so the second that we land, we can immediately start attacking our partner's legs. All right, I'm going to start initially by sweeping one direction. I sweep in the opposite direction, and now as she bows the knee back out here, I'm just going to take my leg and fire it over. This will give you some extra power on the sweep as well because you're firing your leg up and over. I fire my leg up and over, and I replace my foot with my own hamstring. My goal is to get my hamstring connected to the pocket of my partner's hip. So as I fire everything up and over, I catch. And now from here, it's a scissoring of the legs. So I bring my left knee to my chest, and I shoot my right heel down to the floor. Even though my legs aren't connected, when she goes to kick out strong, like try to yank out, it's a very difficult thing to do. And now, when you use this with momentum, it makes it easy to sit your partner down towards the floor. So we start off with an initial sweep out in this direction. She defends by turning the knee in. I turn the knee in. As she goes to fire, I hit a big pendulum here, where I take my leg and fire it up and over, and as she goes to turn that knee out, we set our partner down to the floor, and we're ready to go right in for attacks or spinning the leg and coming up and sweeping. Okay, so we enter into a basic Ashigarami on whichever leg. As we fire up, we go one way, she resists, we go the opposite way, and as she turns back, we throw our leg up and over, and now we're ready to go in and go for attacks on our partner in whichever way that you would like. All right. So as we fire from, instead of sweeping with a Rimi Ashigarami, we fire right to an outside Ashigarami, so they're ready to attack as soon as our partner's butt hits the floor. All right. So now let's talk about controlling two of our partner's legs. Right. Whenever we control two of our partner's legs, you have greatly increase your effectiveness with being able to both finish and sweep your partner. All right. So let's take a look at our partner's stance. When we lock an Ashigarami on our partner, whether or not we're going to be able to use a basic sweep by controlling one leg is completely contingent upon your partner's shoulders relative to the hips. If my partner's shoulders are directly over her hips, no amount of backstepping or balance will ever be able to stop her from falling over. If she stands with her shoulders right above her hips, try to backstep out. That was a pathetic attempt at a backstep. If she goes to backstep out, she backsteps a few times, then she immediately falls down. Okay? But if my partner does a good job of leaning her shoulders forward so that her shoulders are well in front of her hips, it's going to be incredibly hard when she combines that with the backstep to knock my partner over. Okay? So whenever I see my partner's shoulders are well in front of their hips, I always have to switch to some form of two-legged control. Whether it's physically grabbing my partner's second leg or switching to some kind of X-guard variation, I have to control both of my partner's legs. Okay? So as a general rule, if your partner's shoulders are on top or directly above their hips, control one leg and go with basic sweeps. If your partner's more advanced and she has her shoulders in front of the hips, then you have to start using more advanced sweeps. Okay? So now we're going to look at both a proactive and a reactive sweep against a more advanced opponent with shoulders in front of the hips. A good opponent is always going to do at least one thing, which is leaning her shoulders forward, like so. Now, if I feel like I go to sit my partner down and she leans the shoulders forward, I feel like I can't sit my partner down, I'm going to take my foot off of my partner's hip proactively and catch an Achilles, if I didn't already have one. So now the Achilles holds me in place. So even if my legs aren't in place when she goes to run away from me, the Achilles holds me in place. Now, I proactively take the foot off, and the foot that was on the hip goes down to the floor. I take my second foot, I put my shoelaces behind my partner's hamstring, right where the butt meets the hamstring here. Notice, not directly in the testicles, behind my partner's hamstring. When you go to bump your partner forward, you always get that second leg moving close towards you. And now from here, we grab our partner's second leg. We fire our hips up, and we catch once again, and now we have both of our partner's legs controlled. Now when she leans the shoulders forward, it doesn't make a difference. I have both my partner's legs. So she has no ability to backstep, and we can easily sit our partner down to the floor. Okay? When I catch my partner's second leg, it is very important that I catch in a specific way. I catch with my fingertips behind my partner's Achilles, with my forearm draped over my partner's shoelaces. I teach this all the time at seminars, and what I find is that people get obsessed with using a scoop grip for some reason. Okay, because a lot of times in closed guard, someone's standing over you, you scoop the leg and try to go for handstand sweeps and things like that. Okay, but if my partner steps her leg forward, if I try to scoop, my partner now can easily kick forwards and backstep, and now everything that you did was for nothing. Now you're back to square one. So what I have to make sure of is that I catch over my partner's shoelaces and behind the Achilles. So now, if she tries to kick her leg straight back, she runs into my fingertips, which a scoop grip will also do. If she goes straight back, she runs into my arm. But the scoop grip doesn't prevent your partners from coming forward and around. The forearm prevents your partner's shoelaces from kicking forwards and around. So when she goes to kick her leg back or forwards and around and backstep, I always have control of that second leg. This way you'll never lose it. Now, as I throw everything up, I just hug my partner's foot into my own butt. What I don't want is for her to exploit the space between my hand and my buttocks. So even if I'm here, if she brings her leg in first and then forwards, she can backstep. So I just make sure that as we go, I hug the foot to my butt. So now as she goes to kick forwards and around, I catch. Now when she gets to kick that foot out, it's completely stuck, and that gives me more than enough time to sit my partner down to the floor. Okay? So we come in with an initial entrance. I get my partner stepping forwards, and we enter into an initial Ashigarami. Now I proactively take my foot off. I feel like I can't get a sweep. My foot comes off. Now we bump our partners forwards. So we go foot to the hip, goes to the ground. I bump my partner forwards, and we catch. And now immediately I fire my legs back into place, and we sit our partner down to the floor. Now let's say this time I have to reactively take my foot off. Okay? So instead of me taking my foot off by myself, she takes my foot off for me. Whenever I see this, the first thing I have to do, take a grip. First thing I have to do is break that grip. I can't bring my foot straight down. Okay? If she takes a strong grip, it's hard for me to push into her grip. So instead, switch legs. So instead, I go out first. If I just go straight down, you're going into her forefingers. This will give her more than enough time to take a second grip on your leg, ankle, and backstep through, and now she's gone. So first thing I have to do is as she peels that grip off, I go out first, then to the ground. Now I push my partner forward, I get to the second leg, and that's a reactive attempt. Okay? So we have proactive, I go to sit her down, it fails, I take the foot off. I have reactive, she goes to take that foot off, I come out first, and then I go down, and now I'm in. And you also have the option, just as before, we can fire right into outside Ashigarami as we fall. So instead of staying with a Rimi Ashigarami, I have control of both my partner's legs. I bump her forward, we come up, and now as I sit her down, we can fire into outside Ashigarami just as we did before. So you have the choice of going from 2 legs to a Rimi, or 2 legs as my partner falls, taking your knee to your chest. Don't think about just shooting your leg over the top. You'll get caught sometimes in the middle. Just think about pulling your knee to your chest first. So as she falls, feet to chest, and then I fire my heel down to the ground, and we're ready to go into attacks. Okay? So both proactive and reactive ways of bumping your partner forward and getting to that secondary leg. Let's say now we run into a situation where we bump our partner forwards and she stays on her hands, right? Where I had control of both my partner's legs, but I bump her forwards and she just stays on 2 hands. So now, no amount of me pushing back in this direction, even though I have 2 of her legs controlled, no amount of me pushing back in this direction are going to be able to knock her backwards. So I always have the option to switch to X guard. We'll move to that later in the series. All right, but another good option that we have is we can use the threat of a belly down Achilles to sweep our partner, where she puts her 2 hands on the floor. From this position, I'm going to immediately start extending my body out towards the same side that her head is on. So we go, we take our hips up, we start extending, and as we extend, our leg begins to reach up and over her leg. I use an Achilles grip to start turning belly down. So as my leg comes over, my knees turn towards the ground, and we lock an Achilles. Now I come up to an elbow by taking my elbow around, propping up to an elbow, and moving to 2 knees. What I'm going to look to start to do from here is go into a belly down Achilles finish. All right, now obviously this is a leg lock, but we're going to use it for a sweep. I start putting real heat on my partner by putting an Achilles in place, and I put pressure on the Achilles. Let's just rotate back up so they can see. I put pressure on the Achilles by getting my hand up nice and high, like so. So I raise the elbow, and I get her Achilles right at the bottom of my wrist here. Now what adds pressure to the Achilles is the fact that my elbow closes to my own rib cage. You see how her hips have to rise because there's additional pressure there? Here she feels nothing. But when the elbow comes in and the hand's high, she feels pressure, a drastic pressure change. So as we go belly down, we have just an initial control Achilles. We move from a control Achilles to a finishing Achilles, where now I take the elbow high, and I set my hand as we belly down. Here. Then I close the elbow, and the closing of the elbow is what allows me to put pressure on the Achilles. Okay? So she's standing. I bump her forward. She takes 2 hands to the floor. we take the extension of our body out and over to the side. Our 2 knees come down, and we come up to 2 knees. From this position, we set the Achilles grip. We start putting pressure on. Now, we open up our 2 knees. We make sure we keep our shin behind our partner's calf muscle here. We open up our 2 knees, plant a hand, and now we go from concave shoulders to convex shoulders, and we start bridging into a belly down Achilles finish. The only way your partner can avoid getting broken from here is to rotate back belly up. And as she rotates back belly up, we land in Arimi Ashigurami, where we wanted to land from before. And now we're in a position where we can go into all the attacks that we did previously, or we can just choose to disengage our legs, heist up, and start going into passing. Okay? So this time your partner counters by taking 2 of her hands to the floor and not standing back up, because she knows if she stands back up, she's going to get knocked backwards. So you bump your partner forwards. A lot of your opponents too will just try to run away from you. So you get in here, they feel attacked in the legs, and your partner tries to run out and away from you, and they pull you to a belly down Achilles. That's a very viable option as well. From here, we set the Achilles, we lock it up, and we put pressure. If she stays here, she gets broke. So she has to turn back belly up and start fighting the foot off the hip. And as that happens, now we can either go into all of our attacks from the legs or simply come up and start heisting and get up to top position. Okay? So we use a belly down Achilles off the initial double trouble to set our partner down to the initial Arimi Ashigurami we were working with.